Hi there, Karen Flaherty from Living by Human Design with another late afternoon human design weather report for you. This one is about the Gate 49, which is all about principles or revolution. Okay, so we've got the sun in my eyes, and the sun in Gate 49 today starts early on February 8th, and it goes until February 13th. And the Earth is in Gate 4, which is logical answers or possibilities. So the 49 comes off the solar plexus down here, and the Gate 4 comes off the top of the ajna. So that's what we call it, logical answers or possibilities. It's basically when you're getting to the answers after asking the questions and wanting to know what's going on. So the 49 is all about principles and revolution, and then you got the possible answers, right? So again, these are two that work nicely together in somebody's chart, and anybody born this week would likely have those in their chart. So the definition this week is in the head and the ajna. That continues from last week. Last week it was in Mars, and now it's in that 61 is in Venus, and that's here matching up with the 24, which is in Jupiter. So with the sun in Gate 49, a few days after, like 2 days from now, by Friday, Saturday, we're going to move into this, since the sun is already in Gate 49, the night and the 19 is moving into or Mercury, sorry, is moving into the Gate 19. Then we have the connection here, which is the channel of synthesis, and this is all about a combination of sensitivity and the revolutions or principles, right? So it's kind of people who are sensitive or feeling or empathetic can be very principled, and it could lead to revolution. That's the idea with that channel. So it'll what it defines though for us is the root and the solar plexus, and that will make some of us feel a little more emotional by the end of the week. It'll uh, for Super Bowl weekend. We'll all feel grounded, but we'll also be a little more emotional. So watch for that. So with this Gate 49, it's the gate of principles or revolution. As I said, it's from the original I Ching, and ideally the transformation of forms based on the highest principles and not simply for power. So this is about having principles and transforming them so that they can become better for people based on the highest principles and not simply for the power of perhaps starting a revolution or creating a revolution, and then if you do create a revolution, that it's still based on highest principles, right? The incarnation crosses this week are the crosses of explanation, principles, and revolution, and in quantum human design we do call it revolution. In Gate 4, we can call it logical answers or possibilities. It's also in the original I Ching youthful folly or formulation. And this is the energy to beguile and succeed despite ignorance, freedom from retribution. Now, I beg to differ with the ignorance piece of it or the youthful folly part of it. I happen to have this in my chart. It doesn't always give you the right answer, but it does give you answers. And so you always have the possibility of answers, is what I like to think of it as. And the freedom from retribution, I think, is just about having possible answers and perhaps not being so wedded to them that it upsets other people. In the gene keys, intolerance is the shadow, understanding is the gift, and forgiveness is the CD. And in quantum human design, we do call it possibility. So with this gene key 49, the shadow is reaction. In other words, like reacting to somebody's take on principles or their take on principles or their take on your principles. The gift is revolution, moving into change, and then the CD is rebirth, because from the revolution you'll have a new outcome, right? Or a new structure or a new city or a new like a city council or new structure for the building or the government or the whatever. And so you can see how those kind of move up. He says in the graphic, the fuel of reaction is the fear of rejection. So why we're reacting to things is usually because we're fearing rejection, right? We're not willing to um, be rejected. It doesn't feel good, right? And so most people don't like being rejected. There are some people who don't mind it at all. You've probably met salespeople who just are fine with going from one sale to the next sale to the next sale and having the possibility of rejection each and every time, right? And they don't react. Well, think of it when people do react, right? That's the people who are either very standing in their position and not wanting the rejection and therefore reacting. So this fuel of what fuels reactions in people is that fear of rejection. If you don't care, if you are able to, basically stay above the fray and not be bothered by people's rejection, then you'll be fine. You don't have to react, right? I mean, there so many I've seen a bunch of videos, a few videos on YouTube recently about this kind of psychological way of just not reacting. And they use movie clips, of course, and things like that, but you cannot react. You don't have to react to rejection or to insults or to some kind of slight. And then, don't forget, some slights are more minor than others. Some people are quite reactive when they feel slighted, and that's usually indication of low self-esteem or previous triggers or previous trauma in their lives. So you don't have to react. I mean, to me, that was kind of a novel approach, right? You don't have to react to what people are saying all the time. Especially if you're emotional, and even if you're not, even if you happen to have the emotional solar plexus open on your chart, you can still get pretty incensed by other people. So and don't forget, this gate 49 does come off and the gene key 49 comes off the solar plexus. So it is meant to be an emotional reaction when it does come. And so, depending on who's in the room, even if you have an open solar plexus, you can get rather reactive. And so you have the choice, is what he's saying. If you're not fearing rejection, let's put it that way. If you're not fearing rejection, then you don't have to worry about reaction of any sort, or especially overreacting. He also says, as long as you see your own people as good and others as evil, you remain a prisoner of the 49th shadow. This is so much about others, seeing people as others, another religion, another race, another caste, another social status, another community, another country, another whatever it is. When we see people as other, and especially if we see them as evil, and you see your own people as good, this is where there's obviously going to be rejection and that reaction. He also says the nature of the gift frequency of revolution is beyond fear, and it's anchored in a deep goodwill towards all creatures. So we can have a revolution, but it may be um, either a quiet revolution or a peaceful revolution or a revolution that doesn't need to hurt others. We can get beyond the fear and really anchor it in deep goodwill, as he says, toward everyone. Then we can have change without necessarily having a war or a conflict or any kind of an upset. So these are all just things to think about this week as we think about principles and revolution. And by the way, those principles, you might wonder why principles and revolution are linked. It's because when we get upset about the principles being dismissed or not listened to or not observed in some way, that's when it will lead to revolution. For example, with the civil rights movement in the 60s in the United States. It was a quiet revolution, and yet it was very powerful because the people who were committed to it decided to make it a peaceful revolution, but they just weren't willing to put up with the discrimination that had been prevalent since the Jim Crow era, that started after the Civil War. And so there was a change, and it wasn't accepted readily by everyone. And yet it was a revolution. It did make changes and it did eventually bring change for everyone in the country. So we've got a number of birthdays this week, and as I was looking at them, you can see that they're all people who created a little bit of a revolution in whatever they were doing. So, for example, James Dean, right? He was an actor, but he was considered a rebel. And in the early or late 50s, that was pretty rebellious to be doing what he was doing, riding a motorcycle and wearing a leather jacket and, living the life he led in Hollywood. Thomas Edison, revolutionary, right? With the light bulb, the invention of the light bulb, and creating light literally for the entire world. Alice Walker, writing the color purple in a way that hadn't really been done before in the vernacular of people living in the South, and actually writing it that way, so that it was difficult for some people to understand. But once they got the gist of the story, it was revolutionary in the way it was written, in the way it was portrayed, and in the things she talked about. Most people didn't talk about those kinds of stories from the South at that time. And so it was revolutionary of her to write about, for example, in The Color Purple. Charles Darwin, with his series of evolution, was revolutionary. Abraham Lincoln, of course, creating the changes that he did during his administration, and then basically overseeing the Civil War and bringing it to a peaceful end, was pretty revolutionary in those days. And Chuck Yeager literally busted the limits and was revolutionary in terms of speeding through in flight through the sound barrier. So anyway, lots of people who did lots of bigger things than some others. So I hope you have a wonderful week. Perhaps it will be revolutionary. Perhaps it will be based in principles. Perhaps it will be a week to uphold the principles that you've always had or wanted to have or aspire to have. And then maybe it's time to be a little revolutionary about it. Who knows? So if you get the urge to be revolutionary in some way, this is why. So have a great week, and I will talk to you soon. Be well.